Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You want to know how recruit Zalthar ended up with his shoulder hanging at an angle that would make a Bendorian pretzel jealous? Well, sit your scales down and listen closely, because this is the kind of stupidity that gets passed down through generations as a cautionary tale. It all started 3 rotations ago on the blood-soaked hellscape they call Kepler 4042b. Not exactly the vacation destination the recruitment hollows promised, was it? No. Instead of the glorious opportunity to serve alongside the legendary Terran Defense Corps, we got front-row seats to what humans lovingly call total warfare. And trust me, when humans say total, they mean it in ways that would make a Vraxian death priest weep. The hegemony thought they were so clever, didn't they? Oh, let's ally with these primitive apes. They can handle the groundwork while we provide superior tactical oversight. Superior tactical oversight. That's what High Command called it when they stuck us in the same barracks as the humans and told us to integrate seamlessly into joint operations. I should have known we were doomed the moment I saw Lieutenant Maya Torres walk into the briefing room. Not because she was particularly intimidating. Quite the opposite, actually. She stood maybe 5.5 feet tall, had this mess of dark hair that somehow stayed perfect even after 12 hours of combat, and moved with this casual confidence that screamed, "I could kill you 17 different ways before my morning coffee." But here's the thing about humans that nobody tells you in basic training. They don't look dangerous until they are. It's like watching a dormant volcano and thinking, oh, how pleasant and peaceful, right before it turns your entire continent into molten slag. Zalthar, poor bastard, learned this lesson the hard way. We'd been stationed at Forward Operating Base Crimson for exactly 6 days when the first real engagement happened. The Catherian Empire had finally decided to test our defensive perimeter, and by test I mean they sent approximately 3,000 of their elite shock troops to turn us into a fine red mist. The alarm started screaming at 0347 hours, which, according to human tradition, meant we were about to have what they called a really bad day. Maya was already suited up when the rest of us were still fumbling with our gear. Humans, it turns out, have this delightful habit of sleeping in their armor during active campaigns. Because apparently comfort is for species that don't regularly volunteer to fight impossible odds for fun. Perimeter breach, Sector 7, came the crackling voice over the comm system. All units to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Zalthar, being fresh out of the academy and still believing that protocol actually mattered in wartime, started reciting regulation procedures. According to Joint Operations Manual Section 15-7, we should establish communication with— "Shut up and move," Maya interrupted, shoving past him toward the armory. "Save the textbook quotes for when we are not about to get our asses handed to us." That should have been his first clue. When a human tells you to shut up and move, you shut up and move. You don't argue. You don't question. You certainly don't grab their arm to establish proper chain of command protocols. But Zalthar, bless his academically trained heart, did exactly that. The moment his clawed hand made contact with Maya's forearm, I swear I could hear the universe collectively hold its breath. Time seemed to slow down, giving me a perfect view of what happens when 80 pounds of concentrated Terran violence decides it doesn't appreciate being manhandled. Maya's response was educational. And by educational I mean it redefined my understanding of physics, anatomy, and the creative application of leverage. She pivoted on her left foot, grabbed Zalthar's wrist with her free hand, and used his own momentum to send him into a controlled fall that ended with his face intimately acquainted with the deck plating. The whole maneuver took maybe 2 seconds and produced this deeply unsettling popping sound that I'm pretty sure was Zalthar's shoulder deciding it didn't want to be attached anymore. "Rule number 1, Maya said, not even breathing hard as she stepped over Zalthar's twitching form. "Don't touch the Deathworlder without permission. Rule number 2, there is no rule number 2 because you should have learned from rule number 1. The medic, a cheerful human named Jake Morrison, who somehow managed to find humor in arterial spray patterns, just shook his head as he knelt beside Zalthar. Separated shoulder, possible nerve damage. He will live, but he's definitely not going to be playing violin anytime soon. "I don't play violin," Zalthar wheezed from the floor. "It's a figure of speech," Rookie Jake replied, already prepping a pain injector. "Trust me, you will understand human expressions a lot better once you stop trying to grab us." Meanwhile, the base's defensive guns had started their deadly symphony, sending streams of plasma and kinetic rounds into the approaching Catherian forces. The whole structure shook with each impact, dust and debris raining down from the ceiling as enemy artillery found their range. "Torres, your unit ready to move?" came the voice of Commander Harrison over the calm as if he was asking about the weather instead of coordinating a desperate defensive action. "Ready and willing, sir," Maya responded, hefting her rifle, a modified Terran M440 that could punch through 3 inches of hardened ceramite. "Just had to educate one of our new friends about personal space. I helped drag Zalthar to the medical bay while the humans moved out to their positions. Through the reinforced windows I could see the first wave of Catherian shock troops cresting the ridgeline, their bioluminescent armor pulsing in coordinated patterns that meant they were ready to kill everything in their path. What followed was a masterclass in why humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most effective ground combatants. They didn't just fight, they waged war with an artistic brutality that turned the battlefield into their personal canvas. Maya's squad took position behind a series of hardened barriers, their weapons spitting death with mechanical precision. But it wasn't just the firepower that made them terrifying, it was the way they adapted, improvised, and turned every disadvantage into an opportunity for creative violence. When the first Catherian wave broke through the outer perimeter, I watched through the command center's tactical display as Maya's team pulled back to secondary positions. Not retreating, tactical withdrawal. There's a difference, apparently, and that difference involved a lot of carefully placed explosive charges that turned the abandoned forward positions into very large, very deadly surprises. The explosion lit up the pre-dawn darkness like a miniature sun, vaporizing approximately 200 Catherian troops in a spectacular display of fire and shrapnel. The humans called it saying hello. I called it gratuitous overkill. We were both right. Phase 1 complete? Maya's voice crackled over the comm, completely unbothered by the fact that she'd just orchestrated the violent demise of several hundred enemy combatants, falling back to checkpoint Bravo. Zalthar, meanwhile, was discovering the joys of human battlefield medicine. Jake had managed to relocate his shoulder, but the nerve damage meant his left arm was about as useful as a decorative fin. "So," Jake said, conversationally while applying a neural stimulator to Zalthar's shoulder, "what exactly possessed you to grab a Terran soldier during combat prep? Did they skip the xenobiology briefings at your academy?" I was trying to establish proper protocol," Zalthar admitted, wincing as the stimulator sent electrical pulses through his damaged nerves. "The manual clearly states that in joint operations, command authority should—" "Kid," Jake interrupted, "let me give you some free advice. Human combat doctrine doesn't give a damn about your manual. When we are about to fight for our lives, we operate on instinct, training and a healthy disregard for anything that slows us down. That includes well-meaning aliens who think regulations matter when people are shooting at us." The base shook again as another wave of artillery impacts rained down. Through the medical base speakers, we could hear the ongoing battle, the sharp crack of human weapons, the deeper thrum of Catherian energy cannons, and the occasional explosion that made the lights flicker. "How did they do it?" Zalthar asked, staring at the tactical display where human positions were marked in green. Despite being outnumbered almost 4-1, they were not only holding their ground but actually pushing the Catherians back. Jake followed his gaze and grinned. "Practice. Lots and lots of practice. See, most species evolve on nice, stable worlds where cooperation and diplomacy solve problems. Humans evolved on a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill them in increasingly creative ways. They learned to fight because everything else on their world was bigger, stronger, faster, or more venomous than they were." Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered and stayed dim. "They turned warfare into an art form, because it was either that or extinction," Jake continued, checking his medical supplies. "And now they apply that same creative violence to protecting their allies, which, by the way, includes you, even if you are too stupid to appreciate it." I was about to point out that Jake's bedside manner needed work when the comm system erupted with activity. All units. This is command. We have breakthrough in Sector 12. Repeat. Enemy forces have breached the inner perimeter. All available personnel to defensive positions. Now." Jake immediately started packing his gear. Looks like the party's coming to us? Through the medical bay's windows, I could see human soldiers running past, their movements quick and efficient despite the obvious urgency. No panic, no confusion, just professional competence in the face of imminent violence. Maya's voice cut through the radio chatter. "Command, this is Torres. My squad is moving to intercept the breakthrough. We have visual on approximately 50 Kitherian heavies advancing on the command center." 50 Kitherian heavies. Each one standing nearly 8 feet tall, armed with plasma cannons that could melt through a tank, and protected by bioadaptive armor that could shrug off most small arms fire. Against a human squad of 12, any sane species would have called for immediate evacuation. "Copy that, Torres. You are cleared to engage." "Happy hunting." "Acknowledged, Command." Torres out. I helped Jake get Zalthar mobile. His shoulder was functional enough for basic movement, though he'd be useless in combat. We made our way to the command center, where the tactical displays showed the approaching Kitherian force like a red tide washing toward our position. "Shouldn't we be evacuating?" Zalthar asked, his voice tight with pain and barely controlled panic. Commander Harrison overheard and turned to face us. He was a grizzled veteran with scars that told stories of a dozen different battlefields, and his expression was the kind of calm that comes from absolute confidence in his people. "Son," he said, "when Maya Torres tells you she's going hunting, you don't run. You get comfortable and enjoy the show." The tactical display showed Maya's squad taking position in the main corridor leading to the command center. 12 humans against 50 Kitherian heavies. In a confined space where the aliens' size and firepower should have given them every advantage. Should have. The first Kitherian heavy rounded the corner at exactly 0412 hours, its plasma cannon already charged and ready to fire. What it found waiting for it was Maya Torres with a rocket launcher and what humans call a bad attitude. The rocket hit the Kitherian center mass, punching through its bioadaptive armor and detonating inside its chest cavity. The explosion painted the corridor walls with bioluminescent gore and sent a very clear message to the 49 heavies, still advancing. This was going to hurt. What followed was 15 minutes of the most brutal, efficient, and creative violence I have ever witnessed. The humans turned that corridor into a killing field, using every angle, every piece of cover, and every dirty trick in their considerable arsenal. They used gravity mines to crush advancing Kitherians against the ceiling. They rigged plasma grenades to create shaped charges that could punch through heavy armor. Maya herself accounted for at least 8 kills with nothing but her sidearm and what appeared to be an unhealthy understanding of Kitherian anatomy. "How?" Zalthar whispered, watching the tactical display as human markers systematically eliminated Kitherian positions. "How are they doing this?" Commander Harrison smiled grimly. "Because they are humans, son. Humans don't fight fair. They fight to win." The last Kitherian heavy fell at 0427 hours, its bioluminescent death glow fading as Maya's squad secured the corridor. 50 elite shock troops, eliminated with 0 human casualties and minimal ammunition expenditure. "Command, this is Torres. Corridor secured. We are going to need a cleanup crew down here." "Outstanding work, Torres. All units, threat is neutralized. Stand down to yellow alert." Jake clapped Zalthar on his good shoulder. "And that, my academically trained friend, is why you don't grab the Deathworlder's arm. Because when the shooting starts, you want them focused on the enemy, not on teaching you proper etiquette." But the lesson was far from over. Because as we would learn in the coming hours, what had just happened was not the climax of our story. It was barely the opening act. The real education was about to begin, and it would teach us things about human nature that no academy briefing could ever prepare us for. Things about what happens when you threaten their friends, their mission, or their morning coffee. Things that would make Zalthar's dislocated shoulder seem like a gentle massage by comparison. Because the Kitherians, you see, had made a fundamental miscalculation. They thought this was just another tactical engagement, another test of defenses to probe for weaknesses. They were wrong. This was personal now. And when humans take things personally, well, let's just say that what we'd witnessed so far was them being polite. You think 50 dead Kitherian heavies was impressive? Oh, my naive little friend. You have no idea what humans consider getting started. What happened next would make that corridor fight look like a friendly disagreement over lunch plans. See, there's something the Galactic Command never bothered to mention in their human integration protocols. When humans say they are being professional, what they really mean is they are holding back approximately 90% of their capacity for creative destruction. They fight with restraint, following rules of engagement, showing mercy to surrendering enemies. Right up until someone crosses a line that shouldn't be crossed. The Catherians crossed that line at 0445 hours, exactly 18 minutes after Maya's squad had finished redecorating the main corridor with alien intestines. And when they crossed it, they didn't just step over it, they took a running leap and landed somewhere in the next solar system. It started with intercepted communications. Our signal intelligence picked up Catherian tactical frequencies, which normally would have been cause for celebration. Enemy comms meant we could predict their next move, maybe even get ahead of their battle plans. Instead, what we heard made Commander Harrison's face go through a spectrum of expressions that I didn't know human features were capable of producing. First confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked like barely controlled nuclear fusion. "Play that again," he ordered the communications officer. A pale young human named Danny Walsh, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. The alien voices crackled through the speakers, their harsh consonants translated in real time by our linguistic processors. Secondary objective confirmed. Human medical facility has been located. Initiating Protocol 7 against non-combatant targets. Protocol 7. I didn't know what that meant, but apparently every human in the command center did. The temperature seemed to drop by several degrees as Harrison slowly turned to face the tactical display. "Sir," Danny's voice was barely above a whisper. "Protocol 7 is, they are targeting the civilian evacuation convoy. The wounded, the medical staff." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Maya's voice cut through the sudden silence like a plasma blade through tissue paper. "Command, this is Torres. Did I just hear what I think I heard?" Harrison's response was delivered in the kind of tone that suggested he was choosing his words very, very carefully. "Torres, confirm your current position and status." "Corridor is secure, sir. My squad is combat effective and ready for new orders." There was a pause that stretched for exactly 7 seconds. I counted them, because sometimes when you are watching history unfold, you notice these details. "Torres, you are authorized to pursue and engage Catherian forces moving toward grid reference Tango 77. Rules of engagement are..." Another pause, shorter this time. "Rules of engagement are suspended." I felt Zalthar stiffen beside me. Even with his limited understanding of human military protocol, those 4 words carried obvious significance. Maya's response was immediate and carried a note of something that made my scales prickle with instinctive fear. "Copy that, Command. Rules of engagement suspended. Torres out." Jake Morrison, who had been quietly organizing medical supplies, looked up with an expression I'd never seen on a human face before. It was the look of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen and was already mourning for the enemy. "God help them," he whispered. "Jake," Commander Harrison called out. "How long until the evacuation convoy reaches the safe zone?" 47 minutes, sir." "But if the Catherians are moving to intercept..." "They won't make it," Harrison finished grimly. "Not unless someone stops the pursuit force first." That's when I learned something new about humans. When their non-combatants are threatened, they're wounded, they're medical personnel, they're civilians, they don't just get angry. Anger is too small a word for what happens to them. They become something else entirely, something that makes their normal battlefield effectiveness look like a gentle suggestion. The tactical display showed Maya's squad moving through the base corridors at a pace that should have been impossible while wearing full combat gear. But humans, it turns out, have this delightful ability to ignore physical limitations when properly motivated. "Sir," Danny called out from his station, "I'm picking up movement signatures. Large Catherian force, approximately 3 clicks northeast of our position. They are moving fast toward the evacuation route." "How many?" Harrison asked. "Conservative estimate? 200 combat effectives, including heavy assault units and close air support." 200, against Maya's squad of 12. Zalthar made a sound that might have been a whimper. "We can't..." I mean, surely they are not going to. Oh, they absolutely are, Jake said, checking his weapon. Because that's what humans do, they see impossible odds and think, hey, that looks like fun. The first contact came exactly 9 minutes later, announced by the distinctive sound of human weapons engaging multiple targets simultaneously. Through the command center's audio pickup, we could hear Maya's voice coordinating her squad with the kind of calm efficiency that suggested she was discussing weekend plans rather than orchestrating a massacre. Contact front. 200 meters. Wilson, take your team left. Rodriguez, you are with me on the right flank. Remember, people, these bastards want to hurt our wounded. Show them why that was a mistake. What followed was not a battle. Battles imply some degree of equality between opposing forces. What we witnessed through drone feeds and tactical sensors was closer to a natural disaster with human guidance. Maya's squad didn't just engage the Catherian force, they dissected it. They used the terrain, the weather, and what appeared to be an encyclopedic knowledge of alien anatomy to turn a numerically superior enemy into a scattered collection of very dead individuals. The Catherians had brought heavy weapons, armored support, and air cover. The humans brought 12 soldiers, personal weapons, and a level of motivated violence that redefined my understanding of battlefield dynamics. Multiple contacts neutralized. Maya's voice reported with the same tone someone might use to describe completing paperwork. Advancing on secondary positions. Through the drone feed, I watched a human soldier, Rodriguez, I think, take out a Catherian heavy weapons team by somehow turning their own plasma cannon against them. The explosion vaporized 3 enemy soldiers and created a crater that was still glowing when the camera moved on. How? Zalthar asked, staring at the tactical display where green human markers were systematically eliminating red enemy positions. How are 12 of them destroying 200? Commander Harrison answered without taking his eyes off the display. Because those 12 soldiers just learned that someone threatened their wounded comrades. And humans, son, take that sort of thing very personally. The battle, if you could call it that, lasted exactly 23 minutes. When it was over, the Catherian pursuit force had been reduced to scattered debris and a few survivors who were probably going to need therapy. Command, this is Torres. Pursuit force has been neutralized. Evacuation convoy is clear to proceed. Outstanding work, Torres. Casualties? None, sir. Though Wilson's armor took some plasma scoring and Rodriguez used up all his colorful vocabulary. I could hear someone laughing in the background of Maya's transmission. Laughing, they had just annihilated a force that outnumbered them 17-1, and they were laughing about it. Copy that, Torres. Return to base for resupply and refit. Well done. But the Catherians, apparently, were not finished demonstrating their capacity for strategic stupidity. Because 30 minutes later, we received another intercepted transmission that made the first one look like a polite request for directions. Human base has proven more resilient than anticipated. The alien voice crackled through our speakers. Initiating final protocol. Orbital bombardment authorized on all human positions. Collateral damage to Allied forces is acceptable. The command center went silent. Not the kind of silence that means people are thinking. The kind that means everyone's brain has temporarily stopped processing information because it's too busy being horrified. Orbital bombardment. They were going to glass the entire area from space, killing humans and aliens alike, just to ensure the human forces were eliminated. Commander Harrison's reaction was immediate and illuminating. He didn't shout, didn't curse, didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he spoke in the kind of whisper that carries more menace than any scream. Communications, get me Fleet Command. Priority Alpha. Danny's hands flew over his console. Fleet Command online, sir. Fleet Command. This is Harrison at FOB Crimson. The Catherians have just authorized orbital bombardment of our position. Request immediate support. The response came back within seconds. FOB Crimson. This is Admiral Chen aboard CNS Retribution. We copy your situation. Be advised we have been monitoring Catherian fleet movements. You have approximately 12 minutes before bombardment commences. 12 minutes. Not enough time to evacuate. Not enough time to dig in, barely enough time to say goodbye to loved ones through subspace communications. That's when I learned something else about humans. When faced with certain death, they don't despair. They get creative, Admiral Harrison continued. What's the status of Operation Hammerfall? There was a pause. Then, Hammerfall is green and ready. Are you requesting immediate implementation? Affirmative, Admiral. The Cytherians want to play for keeps. Let's show them what that actually means. Copy that, FFOB Crimson. Hammerfall is authorized. Take cover and enjoy the show. I had no idea what Operation Hammerfall was, but apparently everyone else in the command center did. Humans started moving with sudden urgency, sealing blast doors and activating emergency shielding. Jake grabbed both Zalthar and me, pulling us toward a reinforced bunker. You are going to want to see this, he said with a grin that suggested he was anticipating something spectacular. The Cytherians think they are about to commit genocide. What they are actually about to do is learn why you don't threaten human non-combatants. Through the bunker's reinforced windows, we could see the night sky beginning to brighten as Cytherian orbital platforms prepared their bombardment. Massive energy signatures lit up our sensors as the aliens charged their planet-killing weapons. Incoming transmission from Cytherian Fleet Command, Danny announced. They are demanding our immediate surrender. Harrison keyed his communicator. This is Commander Harrison to Cytherian Fleet Command. Message received and understood. Please stand by for our response. He switched to the fleet frequency. Admiral Chen, this is Harrison. The Cytherians are demanding surrender. Copy that, Harrison. Our response is loading now. Hammerfall commences in 30 seconds. Through the tactical display I could see them 12 Cytherian capital ships in high orbit. Their weapons arrays glowing with enough firepower to turn the planet's surface into molten glass. Each ship was a kilometer long, crewed by thousands of aliens, and protected by shields that could shrug off most conventional weapons. 20 seconds, Admiral Chen's voice announced. The Cytherian bombardment platforms reached full charge. Energy readings spiked as massive plasma cannons prepared to deliver death from the sky. 10 seconds. I found myself holding my breath, watching those deadly lights in orbit preparing to erase everything below. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Hammerfall is live. What happened next was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. 12 streaks of light appeared in the orbital zone, moving faster than physics should allow. They weren't missiles or energy beams, they were kinetic projectiles. Massive tungsten rods accelerated to relativistic velocities by human mass drivers. The first rod hit the lead Cytherian capital ship at approximately 30% of light speed. The impact released energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, punching through the alien vessel's shields like they were made of soap bubbles. The ship's hull cracked, atmosphere venting in brilliant streams as internal explosions tore through its superstructure. The second rod hit 3 seconds later. Then the third. Then all of them, in a precisely coordinated strike that had obviously been planned and prepared long before this engagement began. 12 Cytherian capital ships. 12 kinetic projectiles. 12 brilliant flowers of destruction blooming in the darkness of space. Direct hits on all targets, Admiral Chen reported with satisfaction. Cytherian fleet is... well, there is no Cytherian fleet anymore. Commander Harrison activated the general communication frequency. This is Commander Harrison to all Cytherian ground forces. Your orbital support has been eliminated. Your reinforcements are not coming. Your commanders just learned what happens when you threaten human civilians. I strongly suggest you reconsider your current tactical situation. The response came within minutes. Surrender requests from every remaining Cytherian unit on the planet. Maya's voice crackled over the comm. Command, this is Torres. Enemy forces in my sector are laying down arms and requesting quarter. Copy that, Torres. Accepted. Standard prisoner protocols are back in effect. And just like that, it was over. The Cytherians had pushed humans from professional restraint to absolute warfare, and discovered that there's a very good reason why the rest of the galaxy treats Terra with respectful caution. Zalthar stared at the tactical display showing the debris field that had once been a Cytherian fleet. His voice was barely audible when he finally spoke. They planned this. The humans. They had those weapons in position before the battle even started. Jake nodded. Fleet Command's been tracking Cytherian movements for weeks. The moment their ships entered this system, Admiral Chen had kinetic platforms positioned and ready. Because humans don't just plan for victory, they plan for every possible escalation. But that means, Commander Harrison said, walking over to join our conversation, the Cytherians never had a chance. Not once they decided to target our wounded. He looked out at the settling dust and debris of what had been a major battle just hours before. Son, there's something you need to understand about humans. We will follow your protocols, respect your chains of command, and play by whatever rules you want to establish, right up until you threaten our people. Then we become something else entirely. Zalthar's shoulder was healing, the nerve damage responding well to human medical technology. But I could see in his eyes that something else had been permanently altered. His understanding of what humanity actually represented. They were holding back, he whispered. This whole time they were holding back. Of course they were, Jake said cheerfully. You think what you saw today was humans at full capacity? This was just us being motivated. The implications of that statement were still sinking in when the next transmission arrived. And when I heard what it contained, I realized that our education in human nature was far from complete. Because the Cytherians, it turned out, had one more lesson to teach us about the dangers of underestimating Terran defense doctrine. A lesson that would make everything we'd witnessed so far look like a warm-up exercise. So you think orbital bombardment and fleet annihilation represents the peak of human warfare? Oh, you sweet, naive creature. What I'm about to tell you will explain why Zalthar still wakes up screaming, why 3 different alien species have added pissing off humans to their list of capital crimes, and why the Galactic Council now requires a psychological evaluation before anyone can be assigned to work with Terran forces. Because the final lesson wasn't about human military might. It was about human justice. And trust me, there's a difference that will haunt your nightmares for generations. The transmission came through exactly 47 minutes after the Cytherian fleet became an expanding cloud of superheated debris. It wasn't from the remaining ground forces. They were too busy surrendering as fast as their claws could move. No, this message came from somewhere else entirely. Human forces. The voice was different from the others we'd heard, smoother, more cultured. This is Sub-Commander Vexen of the Cytherian Intelligence Division. We have captured several of your wounded personnel during the evacuation. We propose an exchange. The command center, which had been buzzing with post-victory activity, went silent so fast you could have heard a pin drop in a vacuum. Commander Harrison's expression went through that familiar spectrum again. But this time it settled on something that made my species' ancestral fear of apex predators start screaming warnings. Continue, Harrison said, his voice carrying the kind of calm that precedes Category 5 hurricanes. We have 12 humans in our custody, Vexen continued with obvious satisfaction. Medical personnel and wounded soldiers from your evacuation convoy. They are alive, though their condition depends entirely on your cooperation. Surrender your remaining forces, and we will consider releasing them unharmed. Danny Walsh's hands were trembling as he operated his communication console. Through his speakers we could hear something in the background of Vexton's transmission. Sounds that made Jake Morrison's face go completely white. Screaming. Human screaming. Maya's voice cut through the channel like a heated blade. Command. Did that alien bastard just say what I think he said? Torres, maintain radio discipline, Harrison replied, but his tone suggested he was fighting the same impulse that was making Maya's words sound like they were being filtered through clenched teeth. Copy that, sir. Torres maintaining discipline. For now, the scene to interpret the brief silence as weakness. Big mistake. Enormous mistake. The kind of mistake that gets studied in military academies as an example of how not to negotiate with Deathworlders. You have 1 hour to decide, the alien continued. Surrender or your people will learn exactly how creative Cytherian interrogation techniques can be. The transmission ended, leaving us in silence broken only by the soft hum of electronics and what sounded like every human in the facility simultaneously grinding their teeth. Zalthar, who had been silent since witnessing the orbital bombardment, finally spoke up. They are bluffing, right? I mean, they have to know that harming prisoners will only make things worse. Jake Morrison turned to look at him, with an expression that suggested Zalthar had just asked whether water was wet. Kid, let me explain something about galactic warfare that apparently didn't make it into your academy textbooks. Most species fight for territory, resources, political advantage. Humans fight for their people, and when someone hurts their people, he trailed off, shaking his head. When someone hurts our people, Commander Harrison finished quietly, we stop being soldiers and become something much, much worse. He activated his communicator. All squad leaders report to the command center immediately. We have a hostage situation. Within minutes, the room filled with the kind of humans that recruitment posters never show. These weren't the clean professional soldiers from the recruitment hollows. These were battle-hardened veterans with scars, thousand-yard stares, and the kind of calm competence that comes from surviving situations where the only choices are victory or death. Maya Torres was among them, her armor still scorched from the earlier engagement. She moved with the fluid grace of someone who had spent so much time in combat that violence had become a natural extension of her body language. "Sir," she said, "my squad is ready for immediate deployment. Just point us in the right direction." "It's not that simple, Torres," Harrison replied. "Intelligence estimates the hostage site is heavily fortified. Underground facility, multiple defensive layers, approximately 300 enemy combatants." "So?" Maya's response carried the kind of casual confidence that made my survival instincts start planning escape routes. Harrison smiled grimly. "So we are going to show these aliens what happens when they hurt our people. But we are going to do it properly." What followed was 15 minutes of planning that redefined my understanding of the phrase comprehensive overkill. The humans didn't just develop a rescue plan, they created a systematic approach to ensuring that no Cytherian involved in harming their comrades would ever be in a position to harm anyone ever again. Phase 1, Harrison outlined, pointing to the tactical display. Long-range reconnaissance and target identification. Phase 2, precision strikes to eliminate external defenses. Phase 3, insertion and hostage recovery. Phase 4, he paused, looking around the room at faces that had gone very, very cold. Phase 4 is justice. I didn't like the way he said that word. Neither did Zalthar, whose good hand was trembling as he gripped his chair. "Sure," one of the squad leaders asked, "what are the rules of engagement for this operation?" Harrison's smile was the kind that made me understand why humans had conquered their homeworld, despite being smaller and weaker than most of its other inhabitants. "There are no rules of engagement. These aliens decided to torture our wounded. They have forfeited the right to civilized treatment." Maya's response was immediate. "Understood, sir. My squad requests point position." "Granted. Move out in 20 minutes." As the humans dispersed to prepare their equipment, I found myself alone with Jake Morrison, who was staring at the tactical display with an expression I couldn't read. "Jake," I ventured, "what exactly is Phase 4 going to involve?" He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "You really want to know?" I nodded, though something in his tone suggested I was going to regret asking. "Phase 4, Jake said quietly, "is what happens when humans stop being professional soldiers and remember that we are descended from persistence hunters who chased prey across continents until it collapsed from exhaustion. It's what happens when we stop fighting like civilized beings and start fighting like the apex predators we actually are." The rescue operation began at 30:47 hours. With what the humans called percussive diplomacy. Orbital strikes from the remaining fleet assets turned the Cytherian facility's external defenses into rapidly expanding clouds of superheated plasma and regret. Through drone feeds, we watched Maya's squad move through the underground complex like death itself had decided to take a casual stroll. They didn't just neutralize resistance, they eliminated it with surgical precision and creative violence that turned corridor fighting into an art form. But here's the thing that made this operation different from everything we'd witnessed before. The humans weren't just trying to win. They were sending a message. Every Cytherian they encountered was given exactly one chance to surrender. Those who took it were secured and left alive. Those who didn't, well, let's just say that Cytherian biology proved remarkably fragile when subjected to human problem-solving techniques. Hostages. Located. Maya's voice reported 23 minutes into the operation. All 12 accounted for. Medical personnel are treating injuries now. Copy that, Torres. What's the status of the hostile forces? Approximately half surrendered immediately when they saw us coming. The other half, There was a pause filled with what sounded like distant explosions. The other half chose to resist. Phase 4 began when Maya's squad reached the command level and found Sub-Commander Vexton. The alien was in his private quarters, apparently confident that his facility's defenses would hold long enough for him to complete his interrogation of the human prisoners. He was wrong. Maya's squad had taken the facility in under 30 minutes, moved through 300 defenders like they were training dummies, and reached the command level before Vexton had finished setting up his torture equipment. Sub-Commander Vexton. Maya's voice came through the communication system, calm and professional. This is Lieutenant Torres of the Terran Defense Corps. You are under arrest for war crimes, specifically the torture of captured non-combatants. Vexton's response was predictably arrogant. Human, you are in no position to make demands. My forces would— Your forces are dead or surrendered, Maya interrupted. Your facility is under our control. Your fleet is floating debris. And you, personally, are about to learn why torturing humans is considered a career-limiting decision. What happened next was recorded by multiple sources, analyzed by xenopsychologists across the galaxy, and eventually became required viewing for anyone seeking to understand human psychology. Maya Torres, standing barely 5.5 feet tall and weighing maybe 130 pounds, walked into that room and systematically dismantled a creature that stood nearly 8 feet tall and was armed with military-grade combat enhancers. She didn't use weapons. She didn't use technology. She used her hands, her training, and approximately 4 million years of evolutionary programming that had turned human beings into the most effective persistence predators their planet had ever produced. The fight lasted exactly 97 seconds. When it was over, Subcommander Vexton was alive but would never again be capable of harming anyone. Maya had demonstrated with clinical precision exactly what happens to those who hurt her people. Command, this is Torres. Target is secured. Hostages are safe. Facility is under our control. Outstanding work, Torres. Casualty report. 0 friendly casualties, sir. Enemy casualties. There was a pause. Approximately half their force chose to surrender and will be treated according to galactic conventions. The other half chose to fight and have been educated about the consequences of that decision. But the real lesson came during the aftermath. As we processed prisoners and secured intelligence, I watched how the humans treated the Cytherians who had surrendered versus those who had participated in the torture. The surrendered aliens received medical treatment, proper food, and protection under galactic warfare conventions. They were treated as prisoners of war, with all the rights and protections that status implied. The aliens who had participated in torturing human prisoners, they were also treated according to galactic conventions. Specifically the conventions that applied to war criminals, which meant they were going to spend the rest of their very long lives in facilities designed by beings who had perfected the art of making existence unpleasant without technically qualifying as torture. You see, Jake explained to Zalthar as we watched human medics treating wounded Cytherian prisoners with the same care they gave their own wounded. That's the thing about humans. We can be absolutely merciless when we need to be, but we never lose sight of the difference between justice and cruelty. Zalthar was staring at the medical bay where Maya Torres was calmly getting her armor repaired while Cytherian prisoners were being treated by human doctors. She destroyed an entire facility of enemy combatants. She rescued 12 humans and arrested a war criminal, Jake corrected. Everyone who surrendered is alive and being treated well. Everyone who chose to fight is dead. And Vexton is going to spend the rest of his life wishing he'd chosen a different career path. But the way she fought him was absolutely controlled, Jake said firmly. She could have killed him in the first 10 seconds. Instead, she made sure he will live long enough to stand trial, face justice, and serve as an example to anyone else who thinks torturing humans is a good idea. Commander Harrison joined our conversation, looking satisfied in the way that comes from a mission completed successfully. The Cytherian government has requested a ceasefire and formal surrender. Apparently, word of what happened here has reached their high command. And? I asked. And they are officially requesting that their species be placed under Terran protection. Harrison smiled grimly. Seems they have decided that having humans as enemies is significantly worse than having humans as allies. That's when I finally understood the complete scope of what I'd witnessed. The humans hadn't just won a military victory. They demonstrated the full spectrum of their capabilities, from professional restraint to tactical brilliance to overwhelming force to surgical precision to implacable justice. They'd shown that they could be disciplined allies, devastating enemies, protective guardians, and fair judges. All in the span of a single engagement. Zalthar's shoulder healed completely within 2 weeks. The nerve damage was completely repaired by human medical technology, leaving him with full function and only a barely visible scar. But the psychological impact of what he'd witnessed, what we'd all witnessed, took much longer to process. "So," he said to me months later, as we prepared to return to our home worlds with new assignments, "what do you think would have happened if I hadn't grabbed Torres's arm that day?" I considered the question carefully. Honestly, I think we would have missed the most comprehensive education in human nature that any non-Terran has ever received. Education? Think about it, I said. We saw humans being professional. We saw them being protective. We saw them being tactical. We saw them being overwhelming. We saw them being precise. And we saw them being just, all because you made one mistake during a moment of stress. Zalthar touched his shoulder reflexively. "Some education. The best kind," I replied. "The kind you never forget." Maya Torres was promoted to captain 3 months later. Her squad was assigned to train other alien forces in proper integration protocols with human units. The training program became legendary throughout the galaxy, primarily because no one who completed it ever again made the mistake of thinking humans were just another species to be managed. The Catharian Empire formally surrendered and requested admission to the Terran Defense Alliance. Their application was accepted, though with certain conditions regarding the treatment of prisoners and non-combatants. Vexton was sentenced to life imprisonment on a penal colony where the guards were selected from among the humans he'd tortured. And Zalthar? He became the galaxy's leading expert on human military psychology, writing the definitive guide on working with Terran forces, a survival manual for allied personnel. The first chapter was titled, "Don't Touch the Deathworlder Without Permission." The rest of the manual was just detailed explanations of why that first rule existed. Because sometimes the most important lessons are learned the hard way, and sometimes a dislocated shoulder is the least painful part of an education that changes how you see the universe. The humans never let us forget that they are dangerous, but they also never let us forget that they are fair. And in a galaxy full of predators and prey, that combination makes them the best allies you could possibly have, as long as you remember not to grab their arms during combat prep. Trust me on this one.